Hello and welcome to this episode of the Mixtape podcast. This is where we take a deep dive into the inspirations and influences of my guest as I ask them to select 6 tracks for their imaginary mixtape. Track 1 is an attention grabber. Track 2 is a song they sing in the car or the shower. Track 3 is a cover version. For track 4, I'll ask them to pick a song they wish they could have played to their 18-year-old selves. Track 5 is a song they would use to woo someone. Track 6 is a track that my guest feels doesn't get the attention or recognition that it deserves. If you'd like to support the creation of this podcast, it's patreon.com/mixtape podcast, or you can check out the link in the description below. You can join for free or subscribe for as little as $2 a month. There's lots of other Patreon-only content on there, including the opportunity to ask guests a question and to have a personalised mixtape playlist curated by yours truly. There's lots of other ways you can support me, a like or a follow on social media. Again, there's links in the description for that. Or if you are listening on Spotify, you can smash the follow icon or you can rate the podcast. All of these little things go a long way towards growing the platform, and I really, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, you're listening to the Mixtape for KCR 102.5 FM and the mixtapepodcast.com. Joining me today, it is an absolute pleasure to welcome Mr. Andrew Farriss. How are you, Andrew?
I'm all right, Mark. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Just before we started recording there, you were filling me in on your travel plans for the last 24, 48 hours. It sounds like you've been around a fair bit, mate. So I'll try and make this as quick as we can. So you're here in WA at the moment for the Something Stronger tour. You're playing a Gatsby's Manjimup today, Thursday. It's the River in Margs on Friday, Frothcraft Brewery on Saturday, that's in Bunbury, and Mojo's in Freo on Sunday. andrewfarriss.com/tour for tickets and info for those. It's just set list wise, Andrew, what can people expect this weekend from your live show, mate?
Well, I'll be playing songs off my self-titled LP album that I had out called Andrew Farriss, because I got no imagination, so I think of a name for it, right? And then I got a 5-track EP out as well called Love Makes the World. So I'll be playing some songs off that. I'll also be playing some brand new songs, which are for my forthcoming album called The Prospector, which will be out in early 2025. They've been going down well, those songs, which is great. And also, I'll be, because there's one of the main writers for INXS, and I wrote most of the music for that band in my career. Love INXS, love the music, love the band, miss Michael, I miss my brothers and Kirk and Gary and, all those guys. Fantastic band. But I might even play some songs that I wrote for them. So, yeah.
Fantastic. I think there's always going to be, for someone of your stature and obviously history, there's always going to be an expectation from people coming to your shows. I think that you're going to maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, do some INXS tracks. So that's fantastic to hear. You're in WA for these shows, mate. I wanted to ask you as well, obviously you moved over east, when you were quite young. Do you consider Perth and WA as home, or is that over east now?
Yeah, I guess it's both, really. And I suppose the fact of the matter is I'm an Australian, okay? And I detect your British accent in the background.
Yes, mate.
Where are you from originally?
I'm from East London, mate. Yeah, I'm from East London.
Okay. Actually, for the Farriss brothers in INXS, there's 3 of us. I'm the middle brother, Andrew, my older brother, Tim, my younger brother, John. Our mum was 6th generation Western Australian, and Dad was actually from Croydon,
that's right near me, yeah.
Yeah, that's right, out of London there. But I consider myself an Aussie and first, But Western Australia has a very special place for me because I was born here. I was born in Coppesloe Beach, and obviously I don't remember much about it. I'm sure Mum does, but and I miss my mum and dad. I miss them very much. But I also enjoy, where I live, kind of in the middle of nowhere in northwest New South Wales. I'm a little bit different like that, I guess. Is that I don't live in Australia's amazing cities or amazing suburbs. I live inland. About 6 hours inland, actually. And I like it. It suits me. I like a slightly more, dry desert kind of climate for me. It suits me a lot. Yeah.
Talking about considering yourself an Aussie, which, you mentioned just then, that sort of ties in quite well with your latest single. I wondered if that was sort of something you'd written while you were away in Nashville and you were thinking about home and, and then you just sort of wrote the song. So, yeah, I just wondered what the sort of genesis of that song was.
Sure. There's Mark. The song is called Southern Cross Shines, and that's what the song's called. And that's right. And it got released at the same time as another song called Gold Rush to Ghost Town. And both these songs were deliberately written as part of my new material for The Prospector, for my new album. And a lot of my thinking for the lyrics for The Prospectors, not all of them, but most of them are about people searching for things, which is why I called the album The Prospector. Because in Southern Cross Shines, it's like you could be searching for the stars, but it's also, Southern Cross Shines is not really so much about being an astronomer or an astronaut. It's got more to do with farming. And I live in an agricultural community in northwest New South Wales. People around me are all professional farmers. That's what they do. And I've learned over the years that, after 32 years of owning a farm and growing food myself, I've learned that I believe Australia has the best food products in the world, anywhere in the world, for a lot of reasons. People work hard, they have good ethics about producing great food. And I was thinking that I couldn't remember a song that I could think of that really touched on that subject so much, there's a lot of people who talk about emotional sort of, why they love their country or where they live or whatever it is. But for me, it wasn't so much that. It was, I really, really wanted to write a song that was really, at the core of it, is dedicated to farmers, And yes, I happened to finish the song in Nashville, but I really had already started working on the idea myself way before I got there. But I don't always write in Nashville. I also write wherever I am. I can write songs, and one of my jokes I like to tell people these days is they say, "Who are you writing with in Nashville now?" I say myself,
Yeah, absolutely. How was that trip for you, Andrew, the Nashville trip and around Tennessee? I saw some fantastic Instagram shots over the last sort of few weeks of your trip. How was that for you? And yeah, what did you get up to over there?
Well, I've been going to Nashville as an important artistic gathering of like-minded people who still like to do the old school idea of sitting in a room and working with someone and meeting people you don't know and learning something new. It's not about, how much you know or whether you're some sort of entertainment deity. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with you being, artistically and culturally aware enough to be able to accept someone else's ideas and work with them. And I really like that. I think it's great. When I think about the 300 songs or whatever that I wrote with Michael Hutchence from INXS in the early years of our career, and we worked in over 50 countries at one point as a band. But what makes Nashville so special is it's a very sort of human thing. It's not about technology and, look what I can do that you can't do or you can't afford to buy. It's got to do with wanting to work with people. And I understand that. I get that. That goes right back to the very beginnings of my, what excited me about wanting to be a musician and a songwriter in the first place.
Absolutely. I know for myself, Andrew, sort of genres of music that I've been into from when I was younger to when I was older changes like quite dramatically. And I just wondered, like, when you were back in the INXS days, were you a country music fan then? Or was that something that sort of, came along a little bit later?
Yeah, I started playing piano when I was 9 years old. And then my father got a job promotion, dentist. And so my brothers and my sister and mum and dad and I, we all moved to the east coast of Australia from Perth to Sydney. And then I did my high schooling in Sydney. But mum and dad preferred to live in Western Australia than Sydney. So mum got a bit homesick, I think. And so mum and dad moved back. When I was about 14, I started, experimenting and writing songs, what you'd call songwriting. I didn't even know what I was doing. In fact, my uncle left his upright Beale piano, 1950s piano at mum and dad's house, and where obviously I was living. And I started to pull it apart and see how it worked. And like dad was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I want to see how the piano works. I'm interested in the mechanics of how it works." And someone had asked me in an interview not that long ago, are you interested in engineering? I knew exactly what they were talking about. They were talking about, how buildings are constructed or bridges or roads or whatever. I said, yeah, actually I am. Because once you understand how something works, you know how either to repair it or make it better, right? Mm-hmm. So part of my songwriting thing is exactly that. I like to work out the mechanics of how things work. And once it kind of, including the music, including once I figure out, okay, and then lyrics are a whole other thing from outer space. You have to be really, I find for lyric writing, you've got to just really trust your own instinct with where you want to head in the song, or if someone else comes up with a great idea, you go, man, that's great. Love that. And then that's often the way I work is that, but over the years, I've learned to kind of trust my own judgment and be my own critic enough, I think, to say to myself, Andrew, this is crap, or, actually, this is pretty good, and then I'll keep going with it and, put the piano back together again,
Yeah, sure. I think given your back catalogue, I think you'd have the confidence in yourself to know, do you know what I mean?
Right.
And be that self-aware. I just wondered as well, Andrew, do you feel like the shift in genre from the INXS days helps your fan base kind of see you as Andrew Farriss, the solo artist, as opposed to Andrew Farriss from INXS?
I think what is interesting about what we're talking about, I'm not just avoiding the question. I know exactly what you're talking about. In fact, what I'll say is I'm very proud of my association with INXS. And I mean, I remember, in the early years, all that touring we did all around, round and round and round the world that we did. And I used to wonder, along with the other guys, I think, is this going anywhere? Is this paying off? We had no idea, But as it went along, we got more and more successful, and we were lucky. A lot of people don't get that. A lot of people, actually, one of the biggest nightmares, I think, for a lot of people is that they wander out there, especially very young people. They wander into the community, social media or whatever it is these days, and instantly they're this gigantic star that's followed by millions of people. That sounds like a nightmare to me. Having been through our very organic ride, I think it's much healthier when people might say, about your band, yeah, they're okay, or they're crap, or, they kind of suck or whatever. And then as it goes along, you're like, well, I don't care what you think. We're going to keep doing it and we're going to get better. And then you keep pushing and pushing. And eventually, if you are successful and you're that fortunate, you can look back and say, well, I'm really proud of what we did, because I think it was good, and we kind of earned that, we didn't just get given it, on a plate, So, and what I'm trying to say about me being me as a solo artist and a band being a band, I'm proud of both those things. I'm trying to get somewhere doing what I'm doing, and people may or may not like it or even accept the idea of what I'm doing, especially because I'm working within a musical genre like country music or Americana and especially folk music that I'm working in more now is not so much what INXS did. We did a very different sort of thing. And I was really, writing very, very different kinds of songs and music and stylization of what I thought would be good for INXS. What I'm doing now is very different than that. I'm sort of like, I'm trying to stick to what I feel people might want to hear, that's not necessarily styled like INXS. Like I'm trying to deliberately work. And so it might be a bit frustrating for some INXS fans when they come listen to what I'm doing. I'm like, can't you just do it like that? Or can you just do it like that? I'm like, well, I know, but I kind of already done that. That's what I did, in the day. And so what I'm doing now, I'm trying to sort of explore, I'm trying to test myself and say, well, is this the best that I can do in a different genre? I don't know. Maybe not.
Absolutely. I think the one key thing that I've heard in a lot of interviews with a lot of creative people is like trying to please other people. You're never going to get anywhere. If you please yourself, that's all you need to do. Do you know what I mean? And that's exactly what I feel you're doing with your solo career. Is you're writing songs for you that you think are good, and then that's great. Do you know what I mean? Like that's good enough. That's the artist journey, I think. Do you know what I mean? That's how it should be.
Yeah, I think, you're spot on, Mark. I mean, I think the people-pleasing thing is impossible in the end of the day.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to like what you do, and you're lucky if anyone likes you, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
what I try and do, Andrew, whenever I'm lucky enough to have someone on the show with the depth and quality of back catalogue, such as yourself, just for my own personal knowledge, I'm going to ask you, I'll put you on the spot a little bit now, what's your top 3 INXS songs?
Oh, wow. Well, I would say for me, I've got a lot of them, actually. But for me,
I know, sorry, it's a tough question.
Yeah, it is. I would say, maybe Mystify. And there's a song called Hear That Sound off the X album as well. And I guess Never Tear Us Apart, because that's become like, I don't know, like a birth sort of death celebration. You know, like it's so huge, that song. It's got feet and it walks around everywhere, you know. And in my lifetime, you know, I would say, you know, I'm astonished sometimes at where, you know, a lot of the songs that INXS recorded and that myself and Michael and other guys had written over the years.
Yeah.
I'm astonished at where it went to. I wish I could explain it. I don't really know. I don't know.
It's that inexplicable magic. I think that's all it is. Let's just put it down to that. But yeah, I think for me, Never Tear Us Apart, I think you're obviously familiar with the show later with Jules Holland because you were on it, the track I'm going to talk about. But that's in like series 60 something now, that show. And it's the most amazing music show. If anyone's not familiar, check it out on YouTube or BBC iPlayer if you're in the UK. I've got a top 5 Jules Holland moments. And you playing the piano and Michael sitting on the piano, singing Never Tear Us Apart is right in that top 5, mate. It is one of the most incredible performances I've ever seen, and it made me love that song even more than I already did. All right, that's enough. That's enough rocking. Sorry, go on, carry on. I try not to fanboy too much when I'm interviewing people, but yeah, I had to do that. Go on, carry on, mate.
I think Kirk from INXS also played sax during the performance. I want to add that because, you know, Kirk's sax performance that he did in Never Tear Us Apart is actually one of those signature things, you know. And Jules Holland, what a great keyboard player.
Wow. Oh, man. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day about Jules Holland. Shout out, Chappie, if you're listening, I know he will be, about Jules Holland and all the unbelievable tracks that he's played on outside of Squeeze, like with the and all the other session like jobs that he did. The Uncertain Smile, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that track. But his piano on Uncertain Smile, it's like a 2-minute song and then 4 minutes of piano solo. It's the most incredible piece of piano I've ever heard. Fantastic track. Yes, love Jules Holland. Brilliant performer. Yeah. Okay, Andrew, let's quickly drop into your mixtape track choices, mate. And like we said at the start, we're doing this a little bit on the fly because you haven't done your homework, but that's fine. I don't always expect that. It's nice when it does happen, but all good. Sometimes on the fly is the best way to pick them. So if you were making up a mixtape or a playlist or compilation, Andrew, and you're kicking it off with a track one, like a tension grabber that's going to draw me in and make me want to listen to the rest of your tape, what track would you use for that, mate?
I guess for me, you know, it's one of my favorite songs ever, really. Has to be Knocking on Heaven's Door by Bob Dylan. So, not so much people that covered the song afterwards, but his original recording, I really, really loved that. Yeah, and such a great songwriter. I mean, what an amazing talent that man is. But yeah, that would have to be one of them. Yep,
absolutely. I'm gonna sit down and do the stats. I always say this whenever anyone picks Bob Dylan, but you'll be episode 81 of this show, and I need to sit down and come up with the stats of how many of those 81 Bob Dylan has featured in, because it's easily 20%, easily somewhere along the line. Either one of his songs that's been covered, or like All Along the Watchtower comes up for track 3 quite a lot as a cover version. Yeah, he's in there. Traveling Wilburys coming there. Like, he's all over it. But I think that shows his reach and his influence as like you say, as an amazing songwriter. Track 2, Andrew, is what's a song that you sing when you're on your own in the car or the shower, mate?
I quite like Ring of Fire, Johnny Cash. I really like that song. Yeah. And a lot of Mr. Cash's work I really enjoy listening to, always have. It's so deceptively simple, you know, but it's not really. And I can remember the lyrics too.
The close to love is sweet when hearts like our hearts meet. That's one of the greatest love song lyrics of all time. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, you know, But like you don't have to remember the 8th verse.
I think June Carter Cash wrote that one, I believe, lyrics. Anyway, yeah. All right. Fantastic choice. Love that one, mate. Track 3, Andrew, is what's your favourite cover version, mate?
I would say, Willin' by Little Feat. One of my favorite bands of all time. And also for INXS during our early years, we used to actually play Little Feat covers. But I like that song. And also it's got a country flavor to it. And I play it live in my live set now. It's
cool.
one of the songs I play,
Yeah.
And it's about drivers, and people sing about a lot of stuff, but a lot of people don't write songs about people who drive trucks,
No, it's not one that comes up very often. Long Distance Love's my favourite Little Feat track. I absolutely love that one.
I love that. You love that.
Yeah, that's a great track. That is a super track.
Who's singing the backing vocals in that song? Do you know?
I don't know. No, I don't know. No, I'm not sure. I'm going to look that up now. Well, now you've mentioned it, I'm going to have a look at that and see who that is. Yeah, for sure. Great track. What I do on the radio show, Andrew, I'll drop the tracks in between as we're talking. If you're listening to this on the podcast or the YouTube channel, there will be a link in the description to a Spotify playlist of all Andrew's track choices, loads of his solo stuff. I might chuck a couple of INXS tracks in, probably the ones you mentioned as your top 3. And there'll also be a link to the Andrew's website and his socials and everywhere else where you can connect with him and check out tickets for this weekend and everything else. All right, track 5, Andrew, is... sorry, I've skipped ahead one. I've missed one. Track 4 is, what's a song you wish you could have played to your 18-year-old self?
Okay. I'm shamelessly going to say, if I could have played it to myself when I was 18, is a song that was on my first album that I released, called Apache Pass. And the reason is because I co-wrote that song with an amazing American writer called Frank Myers, who's from Ohio originally. Actually, my wife, Miley, comes originally from Ohio, from Dayton, and so did Frank. And I was talking to him about that. And Dayton, Ohio is about 5 hours drive to Nashville. And so I spent a fair bit of time in Ohio as well as other places in America. But I was going to say Apache Pass came about the song because I decided to take a break from where I was working in America and go down to the Mexican border in the United States and ride horses because I live on a farm. I've owned a farm for 32 years. I lived with farmers and I'm used to animals. So I decided to go horse riding down along the Mexican border. There's been a lot of trouble down there in recent years, but the history of that area is fascinating. And I thought when I get there, when I arrived there with Marlena, it was going to be like a dude ranch and they'd have a swimming pool and some tequila shots and girls in bikinis walking around and stuff. It wasn't like that at all. It was just hardcore horse riding for 6 hours a day. You pack your lunch, you put it in a saddlebag and you ride off into canyons, But what I really loved about all that was the grittiness of the area. And I got an education on a horseback of that entire region because our friends, Craig and Tam Lawson, Marlena and I went riding with those two people, Craig and Tam Lawson, are amazing people. And they became our friends. And we used to go back there and do more of it. But, with Apache Pass, that was the area, one of the areas we rode our horses through. You could see the ruins of Fort Bowie with the U.S. cavalry forts and stuff like that, Fort Rucker. And we rode our horses up to Cochise's stronghold where he could see the U.S. cavalry riding across, kicking up so much dust that, the Apache Indians would know, like Geronimo and Cochise and those guys, how to escape before the U.S. cavalry caught up to them. But because I did all this riding on a horse, it was very different than watching a Hollywood film where it all seems like, over there, it's not here, it's over there somewhere. It was very much in my consciousness, and physically you can smell like the desert and the dust and the grit of it all. And up the road was Tombstone, with all the cowboys, and just across the border is the Mexican people, and then the Mexican army, U.S. cavalry is on the other side. And then you got the settlers, and then you got the cowboys, you got the outlaws, And I started thinking about all this, and I thought, hang on a minute, this is not a Hollywood film. And I went back to where I was working, and I said to Frank Myers, who's my age, and Frank said, "Hey, Andrew, what do you want to write a song about?" I was like, the Old West. And he hesitated for just a minute because it's like, how the hell are we going to get a hit out of that, right? And I'm like, I don't know, just tell the truth, let's just write about exactly what I just saw. Yeah. And so I told him the things that I'd seen and what we'd been doing. And he said, love it, love it, love it. We wrote the lyric out, and he helped me with part of the music of it. And that's what, so Apache Pass is, I think it's one of my favorite songs from what I've done so far. I mean, I know it sounds kind of like bit whatever, but I like the song. Yeah.
No, I think track 4 is the category where most people will pick one of their own songs because it can show their younger selves what it was possible to achieve. What sort of stuff were you listening to when you were that age, Andrew?
Oh, well, songs like Apache Pass, No, I'm just kidding. Well, a bit of that, I guess. I mean, I did like when I was 18, I do remember listening to Mama Don't Let Your Cowboys, babies grow up to be cowboys, I do remember listening to that and other, older style country songs. I always loved the songwriting. But when I was 18, I was listening to Little Feat back then as well, and artists like that, or the Stones, or I listened to all kinds of stuff. Also liked the Eagles a lot too, and that's not always not necessarily a cool or hip thing to say, but I don't care about all that crap now I'm getting older. I love the Eagles. I think they're the only major act that I've seen 5 times in my lifetime. I saw them the first time on the Hotel California tour in Sydney in Australia, and I think it's 1976 or something. When Joe Walsh had just joined, and it was one of the best concerts I've still ever seen in my life. Well,
yeah, they're on my list of bands to see, but as the years truck on, it's getting less and less likely.
You better hurry up.
Sure. Yeah, I know. Same with the Rolling Stones. I've literally seen everybody, Pink Floyd, Bob Dylan, I've multiple times, but Rolling Stones have just always eluded me. And I've just got to get in there. That's another one where every year goes by. Yeah, anyway, that's by the by. Track 5, Andrew, if you were making up a mixtape for a romantic interest and you were going to put a song on there sort of to woo someone, what would be a song you would use for that, mate?
I've always loved, there's lots of romantic songs, but, one of them that I've always loved is Let It Be Me. I don't know if you know what that song is.
Ray LaMontagne?
No, it's Let It Be Me, I guess, is one of them. Wichita Lineman is another one. Glenn Campbell, that song. Yeah. But I tend to like songs that they're not necessarily all the time about an emotional content. I like the physicality of where people are and what they're thinking. Yeah. I find that really interesting because that's how you really get invested. What works for me in songs, because I find myself in a time and a place, by the lyric where it's talking about somewhere, not necessarily someone, but, they're talking about a place or whatever. And a lot of people relate to that. They can remember, most of us can remember major sentimental moments in our life, not necessarily because of the emotion of what you experienced, but because of where you were and what you were doing at the time. I know I've got too many going on here, but Gentle on My Mind is another one. Glenn Campbell, I love that song, I love the lyric. Yeah.
Yeah, no, fantastic. All right, just finally to round out your mixtape, Andrew, track 6 is something you feel is like a little bit underappreciated, doesn't get the recognition that it deserves.
Wow. Interesting. I know. Willie Nelson put out an album called Teatro. Yeah. And there's a song on that Willie Nelson album, Teatro, called The Maker. Okay. And I just love the lyric of that song. And I think Emmylou Harris is doing a duet with Willie Nelson on that particular track.
That's a dream team, that.
Yeah. And I love it. And it just got a really cool feel to the song as well. It's almost got like kind of a funky beat, which is not what you'd think of normally for a Willie Nelson track, but and it was produced by, I think, Daniel Lanois, New Orleans, I think.
Yeah, he does a lot with Emmylou Harris, I think. Yeah. Great choice, mate. Great choice. Finally, Andrew, just to finish off the chat, future plans, The Prospector coming out in 2025. Will you be touring that album again? What's the release date and what's happening with that album?
I don't know exactly what the release date is, and I'm driving everyone nuts. And part of the problem with that is procrastinating about the running order, which sounds really old school. Like in an era, we've gone back to the 1950s or early 60s, really, again, where it's one hit, you got to have one hit wonders. And, and besides, now we're competing with, artificial intelligence or, or artificial imagination, as I call it. Yeah. And
it's a bit more accurate. Yeah.
Or watch your back, Jack. But I'm not sure what the point is of artificial intelligence. You know, somehow I think it's, you know, I can't help but feel that there needs to be far more ethical conversation about what that thing is.
Yeah.
And the big question, why do we need it?
Yeah. I think it's the ultimate maybe kind of extension of laziness, like inconvenience, people not wanting to put in the hard yards, and it makes everything that these days is about making life quicker, easier. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, being more time efficient. Nobody needs to hear what, you know, Jim Morrison singing, you know, the Wiggles. It's going to sound like, do you know what I mean? Like, and it gets used for stupid stuff like that. And, you know, I don't think that was the intention, but I had a very similar conversation with Steve Kilby from the church about AI. And he said it will never replicate what Bob Dylan can do, or David Bowie can do, or, you know, or Michael Hutchence can do in terms of what they bring as a creative. Like, that's unique to them, and no amount of artificial intelligence will ever be able to replicate that, I don't think. And you know, I totally agreed with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really complicated about this conversation too is like I said, the ethical, like, for example, if medical research to find cures for horrible diseases and afflictions that, you know, medically that people have, and to find cures for our human problems that we have, if AI was to help that and had some sort of control, you know, medically, ethically, I'd say, yeah, okay, I can understand that. But when it's some young corporate guy, you know, waving a flag going, oh, that's, you older people just don't get it, is when I go, warning.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, Andrew, I'll let you go, mate. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. Good luck down the Southwest this weekend and at Frio on Sunday night. It's andrewfarriss.com for all the ticket info and everything else like that, and catch you on the socials. I think it's Andrew Farriss on Instagram, is it?
I believe so. Yeah, I'll have to go and have a look.
Yeah. Like I said at the start, there'll be a link in description anyway for all the links to your socials and ticketing pages and all the rest of it. Andrew, have a great weekend, mate. Thanks very much. See you later, buddy.
Thanks, Matt. Bye.
Bye, mate. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Mixtape podcast. All the links that you will need are in the description below. Link to my Patreon, my guest website and social media, my social media, and the link to the Mixtape tracks playlist as chosen by today's guest. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time.